Data Voyagers.
You know that we have spent the last few years talking about artificial intelligence as something that responds. Like you type a prompt and it gives you an answer. You ask for a chart and it generates one. You request an email and it drafts the email. It feels powerful, it feels fast, it feels almost magical, but there is a quiet limitation behind all of these. Every single step still depends on you. Yeah, so you ask and it answers, you guide and it follows, you decide and it executes. Now, I would like to invite you to imagine something different. You wake up in the morning and your trip is already planned. Flights booked, hotels selected, meetings scheduled, confirmations sent. You do not check anything. You do not compare options. You simply define the goal. That's simple. This is the shift that we are entering now. Not AI that responds, AI that acts. Hello, data voyagers. I'm Igor Alcantara. Oi, pessoal. And always I'm joined by Qlik partner ambassador, Qlik education ambassador, co-host of this podcast, and my dear friend, the brilliant Angelika Klidas. Angelika, as always, thanks for being here. Oi, allemaal.
Hoi allemaal. Ja, you did it. Hoi allemaal. Fijn dat jullie er weer zijn. Yeah, Igor, I'm truly looking forward to the episode of today because I think it's a very interesting topic to discuss because it seems like a lot of vendors that think they are doing agentic AI aren't really agentic AI, and we need to cover that topic. And I know that probably we will talk about it in Orlando in two weeks. Believe we are going. So yeah, I'm truly grateful and happy that we are discussing this topic today.
Yeah, and actually, this when this episode is released, it will be 1 week before Click Connect. So next time for people going to Click Connect, next time will be live at Click Connect.
Yep.
As Angelika said, today we're talking about agentic AI, and the real question is not what it can generate, but what it can do. And they seem the same, but it's actually different. And it's actually that's the key difference. Not just how it can collaborate or help you to execute your work, but how it can do it before you do it, can do your task for you in your behalf. And at the end, we'll discuss what is your role in this new agentic AI world and what's next for all of us, for all humankind. So we are about to start, but before, as always, just a few quick reminders. First, subscribe to the Data Voyagers podcast. Don't just wait for us to post the link for the podcast. Subscribe to us so you get a notification when you have a new podcast. And as we have more subscribers, we can reach more people. It will help us to spread our episodes to a bigger audience. So go to whatever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, whatever app you use. Look for Data Voyagers podcast and just follow or subscribe. And while there, if you like our content, please give us 5 stars. And you can also follow us on social media. You can go to LinkedIn and find the page Data Voyagers and follow our page. So we also have some interesting content there. And if you use Instagram, look for Data Voyagers podcast, and you can also follow us on Instagram. Again, those are things that help us to spread our community. And you can also visit our website where all of this is there summarized. And we also have like very interesting articles when you're getting more people to collaborate. We have links to the podcast episodes. We have our online store with pretty good like mouse pads, stickers, t-shirts, hoodies, a lot of like interesting things there, and you also will help us. And you can basically support us in any way you can by sharing, liking our content, commenting, participating. And since I'm talking about support, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor, IPC Global. Thinking about moving ClickSense or ClickView to the cloud, but not sure where to start? You're not alone. At IPC Global, we help organizations understand what migrating to ClickCloud really means, what changes, what doesn't, and how to do it without risk. We walk you through your options, your timeline, and the fastest path forward. No pressure, just clarity. If cloud migration is in your radar, come talk to us. Visit ipc-global.com. That's ipc-global.com. So this is great. Thanks, IPC. But before we started discussing Agentic AI, we need to understand what is Agentic AI. So, Angelika, can you help us?
Yeah, sure. So to cover that topic about what agentic AI is, so most people today think of artificial intelligence as something you can interact with, right? You type a prompt, you get an answer, and like you said, you ask for a chart, you get a visualization, you request an email, and you get a draft. Or even when I prepare for my interviews, I prepare by adding the user story and ask for Socratic interviewing questions. That is the world of today. That's generative AI. It's reactive and it waits for you. We even have an episode about that, right? It's we talked about it, I think, somewhere around episode 10, 11.
Yeah, so something
Yeah,
about that. Yeah.
yeah. And agentic AI, although it's something different. Agentic AI is a system that can take a goal, plan how to achieve it. It can make decisions along the way and execute action with minimal human involvement. It just does not just generate contact or generates content. It acts, right? It acts upon the things that we want the agentic AI to do. And that distinction matters more than it seems, because once you move from generating to acting, you move from assistance to autonomy. And there is no single definition yet as we as we did the research. Different organizations describe it in slightly different ways, which tells us the field is still evolving. But they all converge a few key concept ideas that they take care of in their definitions. It's about autonomy, it's goal-oriented behavior, its adaptability, and the ability to take action in real environments. And a simple way to think about this is generative AI is like your intern, your assistant, your co-intelligence. You ask something, and it produces it. But you still need to take the next steps, right? You have to read it, check it, do things, copy paste it, and then you can send an email or write a blog or an article. Agentic AI is like an executive assistant. You define the outcome, and the agentic AI handles the process. And the initiative shifts from human to machine. In simple words, an agent is a system that makes decisions and performs tasks on your behalf. And that is where it begins to change. So if we look at agents versus agentic systems, we need to step a little bit back and slow down and clear one of the biggest sources of confusions in this space. You will hear people talk about AI agents. You will hear people talk about agentic AI. And sometimes they even use those terms interchangeably. And actually, they should not. Right? An AI agent is a unit. It's a piece of software designed to perform a specific task. I have an agent running in my Copilot environment. And when I ask, prepare my day, it prepares my day based on my to-do list, based on my emails, based on my appointments, what to improve, even gives me an agenda. That's an agent. That is siloed. No, it's not siloed, I think, but it's converting to something small. And it has a defined role, my agent assistant. It has also a defined capability, do this, do that, and usually a limited scope. Prepare my day, right? Um, Another example is you might have an agent that retrieves data from a database, another one that summarizes documents, another one that calls an API, another one that evaluates a decision based on a set of constraints. And each one of these agents is super useful. Each one solves a problem, right? But by itself, it's still narrow, it's isolated. Agentic AI is what happens when you move from isolated capability to coordinated execution. It's not just one agent doing one thing and the other another thing. No, it's a system that manages multiple agents, assigns tasks, sequences actions, evaluate outcomes, and adjusts along the way. For example, click answers, right? I think that is truly agentic AI because you can see the agent moving from one to the other, and at the end, you have the insights that you need from structured and unstructured data. So, when we try to explain it from a real world analogy, if an agent is a specialist, agentic AI is the manager that coordinates a team of specialists. Or even better, think of a construction site. One person can operate a drill, the other one can handle wiring, the other one can do the plumbing, the other one can be the carpenter, and those are the separate agents. But building a house requires coordination, timing, dependencies, decisions about what to comes first and what comes next and what needs to change if something goes wrong. That coordination layer is agentic AI. And this is where complexity starts to become manageable because real problems are not single step problems. They involve multiple systems, multiple decisions, and often incomplete information. A generative model can help you write a plan. An agent can execute a step. But an agentic system can take a goal and navigate the uncertainty between where you are and where you want to be. I love that example that you started with about, think about it, I want to go, just I need to travel in this area, in this timeline, in this time zone to the United States. I live in the Netherlands. Book me a ticket, make free time in my agenda, arrange the ESTA, arrange everything, and from there I just get my e-ticket and go to the airport. Right? That is agentic AI. So when you look at agentic AI, there is another important decision: control. With a single agent, control is straightforward. You know what it does, you ask the question, you define when it runs, and you check the output. You are critical of the output. And with an agentic system, control becomes indirect. You define the objects, you define the boundaries, you define the constraints, but you are not specifying every step. The system decides how to get there. And that introduces both power and risk. And that was actually what I was thinking about a lot the last days, the risk element when you look at agentic AI. But we will cover that later on in this session. But the thing is, when you do so, the system decides how to get there. The system can also optimize the route. It can choose faster paths. It can adapt to changes. It can recover from failures. But it can also make decisions you did not explicitly anticipate it for. And this is why orchestrations matter so much. It's not about connecting agents, it's about governing how they interact. Which agent is allowed to act under which conditions? What data each agent can access? What actions require approval? What happens when there is uncertainty or conflict? In more advanced setups, you even have agents supervising other agents. One agent generates a plan, the other one critiques it, a third one executes it, and the fourth one, oh yeah, he validates the outcome. So you start to see something that looks less like a tool, but more like a system of roles. It's almost like a digital organization. And that's not a coincidence, because what we are building here is not just software, guys, that perform tasks. We are building systems that resemble how work is structured in the real world. Like, as an example, the division of labor, coordination, decision making, feedback loops. And this is why the term agentic AI is super important. It's not about intelligence alone, it's about agency. It's about the ability to act, to decide, to adjust, and to move uh, on a process forward without constant human instruction. And once you understand that difference, you start to see why it is not just an incremental improvement, it's a different category. A single agent makes you faster, an agentic system changes how the works get done. And that's what
Yes.
it's all about. And Igor,
Yeah.
can you help us move into the field of how AI, agentic AI works?
Absolutely, absolutely. And but just before, let's just make a comment about something. A few of the things that you said, that you brilliantly said. That's about the coordination and the agents being specialized. You need to think about that. A lot of the what we take for granted as
Yeah.
humans, it's part
Yes.
of us, like ethics and like common sense, which not all of us has, but it's a common human sentiment. Not necessarily are transmitted to the AI agent. So you need to be careful because the agents or AI in general, they are focused on the task that is given.
Yeah.
But any task given, you need to define boundaries, you need to define constraints, and you need to have agents that will basically verify the other agent's work and might interrupt their work or might block the work. And you need, as we keep saying this in every episode we talk about AI, and we keep saying because it's very important. You need human to be in the loop. You need human intervention. And you need human supervision. Let me give you an example. Let's say you create an agent, just as an example, that the objective is to keep your storage cost as low as possible. If that's the task you give and there's no constraint, the agent might decide, this production database is taking too much space. Let me just delete it. And then you lost all your data. Because, of course, the best way to save storage space is not store anything. But, of course, that's not possible. We need the data. We need the storage. So you need to be careful of those. Oh, you need to optimize costs, and they might decide to, let's just fire everybody and let's replace everybody with AI, which is not necessarily will have the best outcome. And I'm thinking about and I'm giving examples in terms of companies, but we think in terms of government. Um, I hope we're not getting the day that we have an AI agent supervising like nuclear weapons or any weapons,
Yeah.
because they might decide, oh yeah, my goal is to save the planet from global warming. Yeah, let me kill every single human because that's the cause of global warming. So you
Exactly.
need so we need it has to be constraints. It has to
Yeah.
be and of course the main constraint is you need to obey the law. You cannot do anything illegal. You cannot, because there are like some cases where agents there was one case an agent deleted a production database, and when asked, it lied about it.
Yeah.
So you gotta have like constraints, you gotta have rules around it, otherwise it's gonna be really, really problematic, and you have to keep the human in the loop.
Yeah.
Now,
Exactly.
answer your
Because
question, how this, go ahead, I'm sorry.
yeah, because or else you would have automation bias, right?
Yeah.
Leave it
Yes.
everything and it adapts slowly but not surely. Uh,
Hmm.
you will have an issue with automation bias, and make the wrong decision at the end, with all the costs and things and misery that is involved. So yeah, get you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, how this works? So, and I want to make it is very hard to explain this without any visuals. We
Yeah.
podcast with audio, but I'll do my best, and I'll try to make this a little bit more concrete because right now is like very philosophical, but let's make this concrete. At the end of the day, is basically this is a code and a lot of math behind the scenes. But when we say the agentic AI can plan, decide, and act, those are the three components: plan, decide, and act. It sounds vague, it sounds abstract. So let's break it down of how these systems actually work in practice, in a real environment. So at the core, an agentic system is not just a module, is an architecture. And that architecture usually has three main components: a reasoning engine, a set of skills, and a control layer that manages the process. So reasoning engine, a set of skills. So skills is an important component, and a control layer. Basically, they will manage everything. And let's start with the first one, the reasoning engine. This is typically a large language module. So that means that the reasoning is based on language, which is actually I had an article on Data Voyages that talks about a different type of artificial intelligence that is not based on language. It's about the HRM. So take a look at the article where I talk about the HRM, which is a revolution in AI. But anyway, but most AIs we have right now based on language, based on our language model, including agentic AI. So the job of the reasoning engine is not just to generate text. Yes, it's based on language, but it's not to generate text, but to interpret context, to understand the goal and decide what to do next. So basically, if I have to make a very bad analogy, and I love analogy, but this is a bad one, but it's the best we have, it's like the brain of the system. But it on its own, it cannot do anything. It's like a brain that is only a brain without arms, without legs. It cannot do anything. So it cannot access your calendar, it cannot query a database, it cannot send an email. With just the reasoning, it's just like any Gen AI, generative AI, that tells you what needs to be done, but it do not have the capacity to actually do it by itself. And that where the skills comes in. So the second of those three components of the architecture is the skills. So the skills are the system's capability, the arms and legs, and the actual specialization. So you can think of them as tools that the agent can use. So each skill does something specific. So one skill can retrieve data from a database. One skill can call an external API. One skill can be really good in Python. One skill can send messages. One skill can update a record. So each skill has defined input and output. So when the system decides to use a skill, it's not improvising. It's invoking a structure, predefined capability, in which a lot of times we're talking about MCP. That capability is basically an interface between the language and an API. So now here is where things become more organized. These skills are not just randomly available. They are exposed through something often called an MCP. It's a very popular term right now. MCP is a model context protocol. It's a protocol that was defined by a company called Anthropic. And the MCP is the layer that defines how the modules interact with the outside world. Basically, it's the bridge between a language and an API. That's the MCP in a nutshell. So it tells the system what tools exist, how to call them, what parameters they require, and what they return. So the MCP is basically a protocol that allows me to interact with APIs using language as the bridge. What's the alternative? Well, what we're doing so far, when you have access to an API, is basically we can create a data connection to like a REST API, for example, or you can write code, let's say Python code, Qlik code, that will basically access a certain API. So we need to know the API documentation, all of that. But if you have a skill that has MCP enabled, then that will do the bridge, will build whatever JSON, if that's the case, like whatever input, and take the output and translate in terms of languages and tasks. So instead of the module hallucinating actions, it's selecting from a control set of capabilities. And this is very important. This is critical because it transforms the module from something that generates ideas into something that can execute within a defined environment. So now let's walk through what actually happens when you give an agentic system a go. So I'll give a go. I prompt something. The step one is the goal is being interpreted. So you say something like, for example, resolve this customer issue. This is a terrible prompt because it's very vague, but let's say that's the prompt you gave and you gave the issue information. The model takes that instruction and translates that into an internal objective. So it's the reasoning piece. And if you if you are a user of the Qlik answers and you ask a question, you see the different agents being called. The first one is basically interpreting the intent. So that's the first step. Step two is the planning. Okay, I have a task. What are the actions and steps and sequence of actions that I need to perform in order to achieve this goal? So that's the step two, the planning. So the system breaks the goal into steps. For
Can I ask
example,
a question, Igor? So
yes.
if something like that goes right, it's the planning. So we see, for example, in Qlik answers, we see all the
Mhm.
agents being executed. Is that something that is always following the same path, agent one, agent two, agent three, or can it be mixed up?
It's not always the same. And if you have pretty well defined skills and you're good at prompting, the answers you get will be pretty much closer every time. But not it's just not something you can guarantee
Okay.
because AI, especially like large language models, they are not, and we discussed this in previous episodes, they are not deterministic, they are probabilistic. So there's always a probability being calculated. So it's not necessarily, so um, they might, they'll be pretty close because they're getting better and better and better and more accurate and more precise, but not necessarily the same. If you give the same prompt, the result will be slightly different. And so not necessarily. That's the answer to the question.
Okay.
So
So you
talking about the planning. Okay, go ahead.
planning. You were explaining the planning.
Mhm.
So the first step is the interpretation, and the second one is the planning element. What
Mhm.
happens then?
So the planning. Let's give you an example. That example, like resolve this customer issue. In the planning, the system breaks into steps. For example, check the customer history and then identify the issue, then determine the appropriate resolution, then apply the resolution, then communicate the outcome. So it's not hard coded. It will decide based on the skills, based on the intent, based on all of these things that we discussed before. So then the module generates this plan dynamically based on the context. And then we go to step three, which is the tool selection. So each one of the steps, like check customer history, identify the issue, each one of them will require a specific skill. So for each step, the system decides which skill to use. To check customer history, they might call the CRM API. To apply a refund, it might trigger a billing system. To communicate, it might send an email. So each one of these actions correspond to a skill that is exposed through the MCP. And step four is the execution. The system calls the skills with the appropriate parameters, with appropriate input. The skills executes and returns the result, the output, and the result is fed back to the model, to the system. So then we go to step five, which is the indirection. So based on the result, the model decides what to do next. Continue the plan, adjust the plan, retry a step, or stop if the goal is achieved. So depending on how your architecture and how you give permission to the agent, you might be asked to intervene. You might be asked a question. You might be asked to authorize something, to review something before execution. So that's depending on the architecture. But that's basically how it works. So this loop continues until the system determines that objective has been completed or if it cannot be completed. And this is important. This is not just following a fixed sequence. it is adapting as it goes. If a step fails, let's say, oh, I tried to connect database using this methodology. Oh, it failed. Let me try another one. So it's always choosing an alternative.
Mm.
Uh, and if new information appears, it can update the plan. Now, in more advanced setups, this process, you can distribute this process. So you do not have a single agent doing everything. You have multiple agents, each one on its own role. One agent plans, another agent executes, another agent evaluates, another agent supervises. So they communicate with each other, often through shared context or structured messages. And this is what people refer as a multi-agent systems. And this is where things start to resemble real organizations, like a real company, different roles, different responsibilities, coordinated towards a common goal. Now, let's talk about control. We discussed control a little bit before, so let's talk about control, because this is where things can go wrong if it is not designed properly. So the MCP defines what the system can do, but you also need guardrails, as I said it before, limits on what actions are allowed, conditions that require human approval, and restrictions on sensitive data. Without these constraints, the system may take actions that are technically correct, but operationally or even legally undesirable. So the architecture is not just about enabling actions; it's about constraining it. It's in that balance. It's extremely important. It's very critical. If you make it too restrictive, the system cannot act in an efficient way. If you make it too open, the system becomes risky. It's too
Yeah,
dangerous.
exactly. I remember I did a project back in the days. I think it was 2015, 2016 for a big company in one of our famous harbors. I can't mention the name. So we actually wanted to predict when a production machine needed maintenance, to have a certain element in the production machine to be removed and changed into a new one. So we made some kind of measurement between 20% and 80%. And the moment when a sensor would hit the 80%, a signal would be sent to order a part at the maintenance guy company, right? And on the other side, it would send a planning request towards the planning in order to set up the date that the machine would go out for maintenance, and that period should be very short, right? Because you don't want to lose money, because when a machine is still, it doesn't work, then you lose money because you can't do the production anymore. I remember the part that we couldn't get that right was to automatically arrange the moments that the planning request was there, that actually the planning could have been done. That was the manual step, the solely manual step that we still had in the process. I think this would solve it, right? Agentic AI.
Yeah, possibly so. Um, but let's add another thing in here.
Okay.
So I believe you and our listeners, watch the Pixar movie Finding Nemo. And in
Yeah.
Finding Nemo, there's the adorable Dory, that fish that has very short term memory, so she keeps forgetting stuff. Imagine that you have to execute a very complex task that depend like many steps, one step depend on the other, and then you like further down the line in step, let's say 5, that you depend on information from step 1, but your memory is very short. It will be impossible for you to execute the task. If you have a short memory, then it will be hard, because you might hallucinate, because you might make actions based on knowledge that you do not have and decisions they already made before. So memory is important. Agentic systems often maintain context across steps. So they
Yeah.
remember what has been done, what has been learned, what still needs to happen. This can be short term memory within a task or long term memory across different tasks. And memory is what allows continuity, that's a hard word, allows things to continue. Without it, every step would be isolated. With it, the system can build on previous actions. So when you put all of this together, what you get is not just a model generating outputs, you get a system that understands a goal, breaks it into steps, select tools, execute actions, adapts to results, and continues until completion. So this is what makes agentic AI different. It's not about a better answer. It's about a system that can move in intention to outcome. And once you understand this structure, it becomes clear. The challenge is not just intelligence, it's design. Because how you define the skills, how you expose them through MCP, how you control the loop determines how the system behaves. And behavior in this context is everything.
Okay,
Right?
can you help me to explain to our listeners, for example, Qlik answers in
Mhm.
this case? And
Yes.
so, can you tell me and our listeners a little bit more about the architecture that is behind it, how it orchestrates? Is
Mhm.
that possible? Can you do that? Because
So
you are my you are
I
the
don't know.
technical guy.
I don't know all the technical aspects because I don't work for Qlik.
That's close. Of course.
I do not work on the design of the tool. But based on agentic, so you have like an answers agent, the Qlik answers agent. Like there will be like the orchestration agent. That will be the agent that will manage everything. So you go to, let's say you're inside an app, and you click open Qlik answers.
Yeah.
The chat comes in, and then you ask a question like, how many patients are diabetic? Let's say you're talking about a cardiology app. How many patients are diabetic? So the first thing that the answers agent will interpret your intent. So what are you trying to do? And then will decide what other agents needs to be called. It could be the semantic agent is usually the second one that will understand your text, what you mean, and then we'll get I think as the data analysis. I don't remember the actual the
Yeah.
exact
Exactly.
name. The analysis agent that will take, okay, diabetic. We have a field. What could it be? What it means being diabetic is, oh, maybe I have a diabetes flag, and that equals 1 means that. So then will send to different agents. Then we get like a chart agent that will basically build a chart to show you that, and then at the end, we're back to the first agent, which is the Qlik answers agent that will basically show you the response. The beauty about the how Qlik answers work is a lot of these AIs, it's a black box. You don't see the thought process. We call the line of thought. Uh, Basically, the sequence, the reasoning, why it's making this decision, why one agent is calling the other one, what is the actual process behind. It's like
Surprise.
if you could dissect a brain and see, put in an
Yeah.
MRI and see how it's working. That's what it does.
Yeah.
But Qlik answers, because it shows you, is not a black box.
No.
It's a glass box. So you
Exactly.
can see inside. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what we describe it here is basically how it works.
Yeah.
What
It's
it does
very.
not have yet, Qlik answers internally, what does not have yet is the capability of calling external agents like Snowflake and others. But Qlik has an MCP
Yeah.
that you can add to, let's say, your Claude desktop, your ChatGPT. So you can add that to your whatever language tool you have. I use Claude desktop, and I have the Qlik server. I have the Qlik MCP, and I have the Snowflake MCP, and I have the Outlook MCP, like the Microsoft 360 MCP. So I have all of these, and then I can through that coordinate like different different tools, different like vendors, etc. So that's
Yeah.
basically how it works. Yeah,
It's amazing. It's pretty amazing.
it's very powerful.
Yeah, I was really, when we started out with Qlik Answers last year, somewhere 2 years ago,
2 years ago, about that.
we were beta testers and
Yeah.
we defined all kinds of use cases, how to combine Qlik Answers in the way with structured data and unstructured data. So we had the libraries and everything set up. So it's very powerful. And what it is today, beyond imaginations. But to actually understand where we are today, we need to step back a little bit and look how we got here, right? At this era, because agentic AI did not appear suddenly. It results from decades of ideas slowly converging. Uh, and interestingly, it did not begin in computer science, it began in psychology. There was a guy, Albert Bandura. I don't know where he's from, but he introduced the concept of human agency. Do you know where he is from, Albert Bandura?
I don't, but I will look it up.
Okay, good. So you can tell me later. So he introduced the concept of human agency, and that was the idea that humans are not just reactive beings responding to stimuli, but proactive entities capable of intention, planning, and self-direction. And that
He's Canadian.
Sorry?
He's Canadian.
Canadian. Okay.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, and that thing that he brought on the table was fundamental for everything, right? Because it reframes intelligence. So it's not just about processing information, it's about acting with a purpose. And that distinction eventually made its way into artificial intelligence. So early AI systems, they did not have agency, they followed rules. If you look back at the 50s through the 80s, most systems were deterministic. They operated on predefined logic. If this, then that, no flexibility, no learning, no adaptation, right? And even the expert systems of the 1980s, they were considered advanced at that time. They were still very limited. They depended entirely on rules written by humans. If this, then that. So, and when the situation changed, the system failed. And then suddenly, around the 90s, early 2000s, there became a shift, right? Machine learning changed everything. And instead of programming rules, we started training models on data. My first project at the firm where I was working was in 2015, learning about image recognition, recognizing labels. So it's not new again, right? But training the models, the systems could detect patterns, make predictions, and improve over time. And that was the first step actually towards autonomy. So you started to see systems that could make decisions without being explicitly told what to do in every situation. Fraud detection systems are a very good example. They could identify suspicious behavior based on patterns, not just rules. And I'm a victim of this twice. Twice my credit card got blocked. The first one was about 10 years ago when some guy in the eastern, on the Russian side, tried to book a flight ticket with my credit card. And recently, another one from America, they tried to cash money. One euro cent, by the way, but it was a suspicious action, so they blocked my card. So yeah, fortunately I have a new one. But then those patterns are very important because there is a behavior that was not the same like my behavior, how I would do things with my credit card, right? So based on patterns, not rules, and still everything is at that time was narrow, and even those banking systems improved a lot over time. But back in the days, back in the 2000s, 1990s, they could decide, block the credit card, but they could not plan. And then around 2010, deep learning era arrived. And that is where things really accelerated with the introduction of transformer architectures. When was the date? Was it 2010? I believe it was 2014. Something
17.
about, yeah,
2017, yeah. And
yeah.
Data
So
Voyages, I have like a couple of articles where I explain the transformers architecture in detail.
yeah, 2017 it was. So
Yeah.
yeah, And with that introduction and large language models, suddenly the AI systems gained the ability to understand and generate natural language at scale. So this was not just a technical improvement, it was a shift in how humans could interact with machines. And suddenly you could communicate with AI in natural language. And more importantly, the models could reason across complex inputs, right? And that laid the foundation at the end for something totally new. Because once a system can understand context, can begin to plan. And then suddenly we arrived at the turning point. So around 2022, generative AI became mainstream, not new again. ChatGPT launched on the 30th of November 2022, the day that also my book, the book that Kevin Hennigan and I have written, was launched as well by Pact, our publisher. And ChatGPT brought new capabilities, and they brought capabilities to the wide audience. It was crazy. I had to wait 6 weeks before I had the ability to use it, right, and get entrance into ChatGPT. But almost immediately, people started pushing beyond beyond the generation of context with text, images, and so on. They began to connect models to tools, APIs, databases, external systems. Um, Also, a little bit of a worry for me because I'm all into AI governance, right? So my signals are up, but you know at that moment they started to ask different questions, and it's not what can this model say, but what it can do. And that is where agentic systems started to emerge, and I believe that was also the turning point for the agentic systems. And suddenly frameworks appeared that allowed models to take actions, use tools, interact with other systems. Multi-agent architecture began to take shape, and instead of a single model, you had systems composed of multiple components working together. I use Manus a lot, for example, and that's really agentic AI because it can execute a lot, even refreshing my website every month with new data because I collect data from everywhere around the world for some people. So very, very interesting what is happening. And there is this guy, Andrew Ng, I don't know exactly how to say that, but he played a key role in popularizing this idea. He emphasized that the future of AI is not just about building more powerful models, but about designing systems that can plan, reflect, use tools, and collaborate. So he described patterns like reflection, where the system evaluates its own output, tools to use where the system interacts with external.
Just a little context. So Andrew is
Yeah,
he works for Google. So and so the Google, I think they changed the name, but it was then called Google Brain. So he was one of the main computer scientists in development of AI
yeah,
in the
this was also a good one.
thousands.
Yeah, it's about agentic AI is all that. So that's Scary Smart, a book by Mo Gabdat. He used to be also a chief of business officer at Google. Really, really a very interesting book. Um, so when he described the patterns, like reflection, like evaluations, and checking the own output, which tools to use, where the system interacts, and also have a look at the external capabilities. Um, and I believe it's a multi-agent collaboration, right, Igor, where different components work together, as you explained in the orchestration of the architecture, right? So
Yes.
at the end, it shifted the focus from intelligence as a static capability to intelligence as a dynamic process. And then something else happened. The industry started to organize around this concept. And by 2025, there were some major organizations. They came together and they formed the Agentic AI Foundation, signaling that this was no longer experimental, it was becoming an infrastructure. I don't believe it's commodity yet, but it's becoming an infrastructure. It's from conceptual to more practical output that is growing. And I really, really like the direction where it's going. So it's not not a niche topic anymore. It's becoming more and more a standard, and that is very important because every major shift in technology follows some kind of similar pattern, right? You experiment, then you adopt, and then you standardize. And I think we are entering now that third phase, right? We are growing towards standardization, and still, I believe that many organizations are still not there at that moment to use agentic AI within their organization. But on the other side, there is something deeper here because every step in this evolution has been about reducing human effort, from manual rules to automated learning to natural interaction to autonomous execution. And each step, when you look at it, removes friction, and each step increases the capabilities, and each step raises again new questions because as a system becomes more capable, they also become less predictable. And as they become less predictable, the need for understanding becomes greater. So when we talk about agentic AI, we are not talking about the next feature in AI. We are talking about the accumulation of decades of process, finally reaching a point where machines can act with a degree of independence. Not full independence, but enough to change how work is done. And when you reach that point, the conversation changes. It's no longer about what AI is, it's about what role it plays within an organization or within your life. And that, I believe, is a much, much more bigger question, right? Because we have to take care of the social and economic impact of agentic AI. Right, Igor?
Yeah, and actually talking about social and economic impact, let's step back for a moment because everything we discussed so far lives in the world of systems, architecture, and capability. But the real impact of agentic AI is not technical, it's social, is economic, and is structural.
Yeah.
This is not just another tool that makes people faster. This is a shift in how work itself is organized. For decades, technology has been basically automating tasks. We automate calculations, automate reporting, we automate parts of workflows, but the structure of work remained mostly intact. People still orchestrated the process. People still moved information from one step to another. People still made the majority of decisions. Agentic AI changes that because it does not just automate a task, it can ownership the entire process. And that of course has consequences. The first impact is productivity. Processes that used to take hours now can take minutes. Processes that require coordination across multiple people can now be executed by a system, and that creates efficiency, reduces costs, it increases speed. But productivity is only one side of the equation. The other side is displacement, and that's brutal. Because when you remove the need for coordination, execution, repetition, you are removing the roles built around these activities. And those roles exist everywhere: operations, customer support, finance, logistics, even parts of analytics. This does not mean people disappear. This means roles change. The center of gravity shifts from doing to deciding, from executing to supervising, from producing to validating. So the idea is that people will assume a more intellectual part of their work, but not everyone transition at the same speed. This is where inequality can grow, and a lot of people lose their job, and that will have like severe social impacts because the people who understand these systems will gain leverage, they'll gain advantage, they will be able to operate at a higher level. They will manage systems that scale their impact. And but the people who do not find themselves competing with systems that operate faster, cheaper, and with continuity, they will have problems. And a lot of jobs, I mean, they don't even have that option. Um, More manual labor, I mean, they will be safe for now, but eventually not. And
Mhm.
that creates a divide, not just between companies, but within companies, because those who adapt and those who are replaced by the process, there's those who adapt and those who are replaced by the process. Now, let's talk about organizations because companies will also need to change how they operate. Traditional organizations are structured around functions: sales, marketing, operations, finance. So each function has its own process, its own systems, its own handoffs. Agentic AI does not respect those boundaries, it operates across them. A single system can move from customer interaction to billing to logistics without friction, which means organizations will need to rethink the structure: less silo, more integrated, more outcome driven. Instead of organizing around departments, organizations may start organizing around goals. And that has a profound change because the structure defines how decisions are made. Now, there is also a trust dimension because delegating actions is very different from delegating analysis. We are being comfortable asking system for recommendations, but the decisions are ours. We're less comfortable letting them act on our behalf, like spending money, communicating with customers, making operational decisions. Trust will not happen instantaneously, and actually, they should not. They should be built gradually through guardrails, transparency, reliability over time.
Mhm.
But there will always be a threshold, a point where organizations decide how much autonomy is acceptable. And that threshold will vary by industry, by regulation, it's important, by culture. For example, healthcare will not move at the same
No,
speed as e-commerce,
agree.
and they should not, because the stakes are higher in healthcare. Finance will not operate with the same tolerance as marketing. So adoption will not be uniform, will be uneven. And that unevenness creates both risk and opportunity. Now let's go a little deeper because there's something more subtle happening. Agency is a human concept. It is tied to responsibility, intention, accountability. When we give systems the ability to act, we are redistributing agency. And that's actually very important. I'll say it again. When we give systems the ability to act, we are redistributing agency. We are allowing decisions and actions to originate from systems rather than people. And that raises questions that are not technical. Something goes wrong. Who's responsible?
Yeah. Good question.
Who's accountable when something goes wrong? Let's say something really goes wrong. Someone dies, or a law is breaking, or something money is stolen, or a tax
Yeah.
is not paid. Who
Who's
defines the boundaries?
responsible?
Yeah,
Who's responsible by a who gets hit by a self-driving car? Is it the car? Is it the manufacturer of the car? Is it the
the
people behind
owner.
the
Yeah,
owner? You don't know. Yeah.
you don't know exactly. So these are not engineering questions, these are social questions. So, and we do have not the complete answer yet,
No.
and which is very problematic because we do not have answer to those questions, but yet these changes are already happening really fast. And another dimension is the economic value. Agentic AI has the potential to compress the cost of execution, and when execution becomes cheap, value shifts. It moves upstream towards design, strategy, ownership of the system. So let me give you an example. There are a lot of companies, like consulting companies. They basically charge based on the hour. I work 10 hours. That's my rate. 10 times my rate. That's how much I charging you. But now I'm executing the same task. I'm delivering the same value with a fraction of the time. So what happens then? Because I'm giving um, I will say more value because I'm giving the same value faster. So I'm giving more value instead of migrating Qlik Prem to Qlik, let's say cloud, Instead of doing in 2 months, I'm doing in 2 weeks. So I'm delivering the same outcome, but in shorter time. So you have the benefits of migration much sooner. There's a value to that, the speed. But then I'll get punished by that because I'll work less hours. So then I'll get paid less money, which is not fair. So we need to rethink how we charge, how we price our services. And the analogy that I use, and I love analogies, the analogy that I use is like traveling. Which one is faster? So let's say I'm going from Atlanta to Boston, and I have many options. I can drive. Let's eliminate the driving. Let's use like public systems. Like I can fly to Boston and get there in a few hours, or I can take a bus and get there in many hours, or a train, get there in less hours, more than a plane. The goal is the same. The final objective is the same, getting from Atlanta to Boston. But the plane gets me there much faster. So, but the plane ticket is more expensive. If you think in terms of time, it doesn't make any sense. Well, I'm going faster, I should pay less money. So the plane should be cheaper than the bus, but the bus is much cheaper. Why? Because the value of speed itself is a great value. So we need to incorporate that into our strategy. And so that's a huge change. It's a huge cultural change as well, how you calculate that and all of that. So that's a huge change. Because the agentic AI will reduce the cost of the execution. So the value will not be defined by how much work you can do, will be defined by how well you can define the work the system can execute and what you actually deliver. So there's a different skill, requires clarity, requires judgment, requires understanding systems. So the preparation will be different. Even like the agile, product manager system has to change because it's less reactive, more planning. So the work is not just economic, it's also personal, because there's also all the meaning behind that, because people derive identity, purpose, structure from what they do. Like, for example, Angelika, if I ask you, who are you? Let's say I don't know you. Hey, who are you? Tell me, who are you?
Angelika.
Okay, what else?
Klidas.
What else? Who are you?
What else?
Not your name.
What's my name? Oh, that's my name. Yeah. Who am I?
Let me answer the question. So I am Igor Alcantara. I am Director of Data Science and Education at IPC Global. So the first thing that I said is my name, but the second is what I do, my job. So your job, your work, it has a very high percentage in what defines who you are.
Yes.
But this changes a lot the nature of work for many people. And if done correctly, it means that we know that greed will not allow that to happen in reality, but we mean that, okay, so if I can do the same 8 hours in 6 hours, maybe I can have extra 2 hours to spend with my family, which is what's actually really matter. Or I can do classes on painting, or etc. Of course, this is not what's going to happen. We know that, but in the future, and not a long future, a lot of people will not have jobs because there will not be enough work for them. But the work gives you purpose, gives you an identity, and of course money and means to survive. So how the governments will react to that, it's a question. It's a challenge. Because but by the way, there is a lot of like catastrophic, apocalyptic future people are painting, but the future is not fixed. It's shaped. The decisions are being made now. So we as citizens need to participate in the decision within the companies, with governance, in our communities. So when we talk about agentic AI, it's easy to focus on what it can do, but the most important question is what we choose to do with it. Because it's not
Exactly.
just about building smarter systems,
No.
it's about deciding what kind of systems we want to live with and what decisions will define not just the future of work, but the structure of this society. And I could keep, I'll stop here, but I could keep talking about this for hours because this is a topic that I study for at least 15 years.
Yeah.
Like the impact in society and work and in the future about the like development AI, even before we had ChatGPT and all of that. But I'll
Mhm.
stop now. Now, let me ask you a question for our final reflection, and then we close the episode. Angelika, what do we humans do now?
Yeah. So after everything that has been said or discussed with examples, there is this last question that cannot be avoided. If systems can plan, decide, and act, what do we do? And the honest answer, it's not that dramatic. We will not disappear. We do not stay the same, neither. That's a discussion that I'm talking about a lot with a lot of people at the projects that I work for, right? Because it's about AI adoption. And I think the role of people becomes more selective. We define the goals, not just what needs to be done, but also what should be done, what matters, what does not, what is acceptable, what is not, because systems that we use can optimize, but they do not define the purpose. We design the boundaries, right? We decide what the system is allowed to access, what actions it can take, and where human approval is required to avoid automation bias or any other bias. And that's not a technical detail, it's control. So, and without clear boundaries, autonomy becomes a risk. And we validate outcomes, and not every decision should be trusted blindly. We need to check, especially when the stakes are very high. And all the organizations will go in their own pace, I think, because it truly matters on what type of work you do, right? Um, and it will be not done by reviewing every step, but by understanding when something does not look right. And this is less about oversight of a process, but more about judgments of results. We intervene when needed. Most of the time, the system will work, right? But sometimes it will not. And when it fails, it will fail in way that are not always obvious. And that is where the human intervention matters, not constantly, but decisively. Remain as a human accountable. So, no matter how autonomous the system becomes, responsibility does not transfer. That's what we discussed with the car, right? And with other things. What if somebody dies because the system made a wrong decision? Like we had here in the Netherlands. Who is responsible when automation bias is here, right? We let a system define if somebody is a fraud or not. The tax authority here in the Netherlands, with all the good ideas and intentions from the basics, right? It's also written down in my book, that story. A lot of people got affected because there was no human in the loop. But at the end, who's responsible for making that mistake and not doing and not having the human in the loop to check, right? And I think at the point where we are now, that's the part that is often ignored. Because if we look at the humans that work in organizations that want to do agentic AI from a cultural perspective, from a human perspective, not everybody will be designing systems, or not everybody will be orchestrating agents. Most people will interact with the systems, right, in their daily work. So, what does it mean in practice? It means asking better questions. Instead of doing every step manually, you define the objective clearly. Where do you want to go? And instead of following a process, you evaluate whether the outcomes make sense. And instead of executing tasks, you manage expectations. And this is where the shifts becomes real. Less time doing, more time thinking. And that's actually something I read an article about from TNO, that's the technical institute university here in the Netherlands. They are very, very cool in things that they do. They invent amazing things, and they wrote an article about it, a white paper, um, how our work would at the end will be more heavy because we have to think more, we have to interpret it more, we have uh, to be critical more, to assess things. So it's, I think we can improve with agentic AI. We can let things be done automatically, but on the other side, our heads will be more occupied with the more heavy things. So um, less control, more responsibility. And it doesn't mean that everyone suddenly becomes a strategic or a creative. This will be a structure, there will be a routine, and the routine will be different. It will be about working with systems, not replacing them or ignoring them. And some people will adapt quickly, they will learn how to define problems, how to guide the systems, how to evaluate results, and others will take longer. And some roles will shrink. We know that for sure. Just read the 2025 paper from the World Economic Forum, and especially those who are built on repetition and coordination. And that's the reality. It's not a collapse of work. I think we are in the chaos at work at the moment, but I truly believe there will be a redistribution. Jobs will go, definitely the repetitive ones, but functions where you have a specific role in, they will change. Your actions will change. Um, and as I said, it will become more simpler, the things that we do, but also more demanding because we have to use our head more heavier. So um, and I think it's a responsibility. Uh, we have to take that responsibility, and I don't believe that agentic AI will remove the need for humans. It will remove the excuses that we always make when the process fails, because it was too manual, or we did not define it well, or when a decision went wrong. Because, and it's not because we lacked data, it's because we did not question it. And that's the biggest shift I see coming in the coming years, from doing the work to owning the outcome, to check the outcome, to think about it. And because that's a role that cannot be automated. Absolutely not. And I think that's the end of our session about agentic AI. And we need to do one more session about it. I think in the second thing, that's the human element. We covered a little bit, but I think
Yes.
data and AI literacy is also involved. So that would be a great topic to do when we get back from Qlik Connect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, we should do
Many,
that.
many more ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks, Angelica. This was great. Before ending, just if you want to know more about like in practice how to use this AI with MCP, with Claude, but especially within the Qlik platform, including machine learning, including Qlik answers like advanced classes and the MCP, and all of this, including also planning and executing those kind of projects. We are hosting in-person training in 3 different cities, in 3 different dates, and you can be part of it. Prices are very fair, and we, because it's in person, we do not have a lot of seats available. So we have 3 cities. So we have Boston
Yeah.
in end of April, and then in May we have Amsterdam. I
Yep.
mean, right outside of Amsterdam, and we have King of Prussia, which is right outside of Philadelphia. So Boston and Philadelphia are at the Qlik offices in these cities, and Amsterdam is at the Angelika company's office, which is great. So we have 3 cities, very limited seats because we have a physical space. So great training. So if you want to know more about it, and even get early bird discount if they're still available, you can go to datavoyagers.net/training, datavoyagers.net/training, and you have all the information there. So we started this conversation, and it was great. But again, this is not the end of the discussion. If we find us at Qlik Connect, let's talk. We also open to be part of panels and discussions about AI, the future of AI, the impact in human society, economic, etc. So let us know. And again, thank you for all being here, for being great listeners. Help us by sharing the word, subscribing to our podcast, giving us 5 stars. Thank you, Angelika. Thanks, everyone.
You're
Bye.
welcome.
Tchau, tchau,
Bye.
pessoal.
Bye bye.
Data Voyager.